Let's try that again now that the microphone has decided to work. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 RBC Heritage Initial Research Show. Fresh off Scotty's win at the Masters, we turn our attention to famed Harbour Town Golf Links and the next signature event on the PGA Tour. It is a double tournament week this week, so I'll have some more information about my schedule at the end of the show this evening. But for tonight and tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the RBC Heritage and Harbour Town Golf Links. Would be interested to hear how your all's Masters went. Did you have outright on Scotty Scheffler? He was my pick to win, but was not going to bet him at the minuscule price that he was at the beginning of the week. Hopefully you had some futures on him that were a bit higher than the 9-2 that I saw floating around before the tournament this week. How was your DFS? Mine was pretty middling. I believe I was slightly positive. A lot of very good lineups, or I should say good lineups, but nothing that cracked too much higher than the minimum pay threshold, although I did have a lot of just solid lineups. 70% of my lineups went 6-6. Not saying a whole lot considering that cut line fell to +6 right at the end of the day on Friday, but still managed 70% 6-6 lineups, so was going to have a very high floor this week, but my ceiling was capped considering I did not have any Bryson, no Tommy Fleetwood, no Max Homa. So hopefully you had a lot of those plays in your lineups this week. Would love to be able to hear your success from the Masters, but we turn our attention to Harbour Town, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where every Monday I post research on the PGA Tour. Of course, this week around Harbour Town, the previous winners of the RBC Heritage, the patterns of those winners leading into the tournament, and the players in the field this week who also fit that criteria. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in DFS. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show on Calls. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a very good way to start your week of preparation for the tournament at hand, and he continues to update you throughout the week in terms of recent form, course history, and if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk. We talk about game theory, our favorite portions of the price board, who some scary fades are, our minimum price plays, or 6K, 5K plays even. And the only way you're going to be able to get in on that conversation is if you subscribe to his article. So go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Subscribe to that article. It is free to do, by the way. Lastly, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all in addition to the Masters. Any other success that you've had this past week. Maybe fantasy baseball, fantasy soccer, fantasy XFL, anything that you've had success on, wagers or DFS, and a member of the community, please jump into chat. Would love to be able to shout you all out. Want to hear about all the success. And then turning our attention to Harbour Town. What do you think of the course? Who do you think has the upper hand or is the favorite to win other than Scotty this week at Harbour Town? All that good stuff. Would love to hear from you this evening. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 RBC Heritage. And we start, as we always do, with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet on a Sunday evening. We are in Hilton Head, South Carolina, at the aforementioned famed Harbour Town Golf Links. Famed a lot due to two things. Hopefully my camera decides to focus. Harbor Town, famous for two big things in my opinion. This is a traditional Pete Dye design. We have seen a few of these on the PGA Tour this year, most recently being TPC Sawgrass. This is another very classic Pete Dye design, very narrow fairways, tree-lined fairways, greens very, very small. Second smallest greens on tour next to Pebble Beach, only 3,700 square feet on average, and they do not play even that big, as they are turtleback shaped, dome shaped, if you will. So two very key distinct features of Harbor Town being a Pete Dye design, and we'll be looking at some Pete Dye design metrics, especially tonight. Again, the small greens. Harbor Town is a par 71. They have lengthened it over the years. Now plays slightly longer than 7,200 yards, about 7,213. This used to be one of the shorter courses on tour. Not the case anymore. As I said, they have lengthened it over the years. 4 par 3s, 3 par 5s here at Harbor Town. We talked about the green size. Average, or the acres of fairway, only 22. This is one of the smallest numbers on the PGA Tour. Again, these fairways are very, very narrow, very tree-lined. Just a premium on accuracy off the tee. A lot of rough, although it's not difficult to play out of. Only 1.25 inches long, so not a whole lot. But another distinct feature of Harbor Town: 18 holes with water in play. So big numbers will come into play very, very quickly. The greens, traditionally Bermuda, but at this time of the year, one of the last courses that we'll see with Poa Trivialis overseed. So we're back to Poa Trivialis, what we were seemingly on for about 2 months there in February and March. So I'm getting my notes here for the courses that have Poa Trivialis, but we are on Poa Trivialis overseed and Rye overseed much throughout the South this time of year. You see some additional notes here. Rough is down from 2.5 inches last year. They've cut it to 1.25. A new tee was added on 7, and then new tees on 2, 5, 17. Added a greenside bunker on 10. Just a lot of different changes throughout the years, but Harbor Town has essentially played the same, even though they've lengthened the course. It has been a premium on accuracy, a premium on iron play, as most Pete Dye designs are. So there's a look at RBC Heritage, or at the RBC Heritage and Harbor Town golf links from a GCSAA tournament standpoint. We move to Fantasy National, and with the Masters having been played or completed maybe 2.5 or so hours ago now, maybe 3, the Masters win for Scotty Scheffler is not in there yet. Even with that said, our top performers in 2024 have been Scotty, and that's just going to rise even more. Xander, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Akshay Bhatia, Ludwig Aubert, Seabass, Tom Hoge, Matthew Pavone, Sam Burns, and Siwoo Kim. One field change already in terms of players who originally had committed to play and then have decided to withdraw. Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland, after his very disappointing Masters tournament, is not playing this week in Hilton Head. So before we get too far into it, of course, we saw in the GCSA tournament fact sheet a Pete Dye design. So in the past couple of years, and there's not a whole lot of rounds here, we have a few. You see from Patrick Cantley, Players, the Amex, which the stadium course is a Pete Dye design. So we would get 2 of the 4 rounds at the Amex, the Travelers, and of course the RBC Heritage. So 4 different tournaments, but really probably about 15 or so rounds, depending on performance at these tournaments and whatnot. 15 rounds a year, I should say, if a player plays them all. Your top performers on Pete Dye Designs the past 2 years: Xander, Scotty, Brian Harmon, Patrick Cantlay, Sung Jae, Jordan Spieth, Wyndham Clark, Matt Fitzpatrick, JT Poston, and Justin Thomas are your top 10 in terms of Pete Dye performance the past couple of years. Sometimes, as I've mentioned, they've lengthened the course over the past few years, but a lot of times when I think of Harbour Town, I still think of it as short, less than 7,200. So even though on the scorecard it measures slightly over this, I still consider this a pretty short course, considering it is a par 71, not a par 70. So your top performers on short courses the past couple of years have been Eric Cole, Xander, Scotty, Russell Henley, Ludwig Aubert, Keegan Bradley, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, JT Poston, and Brian Harmon. Okay, before we get too much further into this, come on, Fantasy National, let's have a little bit of trouble. Let's go to the course breakdown here in Fantasy National on Harbour Town. Take a look at how difficult or easy the course is, some of the most important shot types, where our best scoring opportunities are and whatnot. So Harbour Town, you see the 9th most difficult hole, 10th most difficult hole, both play to 600ths over par. So not a whole lot there. I mean, it's pretty close to par, but still on the slightly more difficult end. The 13th plays to 100th under par, 13th most difficult. And then the 12th most difficult plays to 200ths over. So in between the 12th and the 13th most difficult hole is where par falls. That would signify a fairly difficult tournament. And there are times where Harbour Town does play difficult just due to the tight confines of a lot of the holes and the very, very small greens. But one of the big defenses of Harbour Town is indeed the weather. And so we'll start taking a look at that tomorrow. But our best scoring opportunities, as per usual on the PGA Tour, are the par 5s. You see a half a shot under par, close to a half a shot under par. Now the other par 5 only plays, or the one par 5 on the back only plays to 1300ths under par. So that one's much more of a birdie chance as opposed to a possible eagle. And we do have a drivable par 4, the par 4 9th. You see plays to 2/10ths of a shot under par, lots of birdies. It is quite drivable. And when you offset these very, very scoreable par 5s against the most difficult holes, which are generally the par 3s here at Harbour Town, but a few par 4s as well. The most difficult, the par 3 14th, 192, plays almost a quarter of a shot over par. We got 1600ths and 2/10ths, 1500ths, 2/10ths. So you've got a few holes here over par, but when you stack up the extreme ease of the par 5s and the drivable par 4, usually plays to about average, again depending on the weather, but generally about average in terms of difficulty. We move to strokes gained by shot type per round, and for our top 10s, make no mistake, this is a Pete Dye design. You are going to have to hit your irons very well, but look at this around the green. The off the tee just does not play a big factor. Length is not a big factor with a lot of the designs of the holes from Pete Dye being forced layups. It's a lot more about accuracy than distance, and really off the tee in general is pretty suppressed in terms of importance here. We move to top 5s. The approach starting to get away from the putting, distance itself from the putting, I should say. The around the green still more important than the off the tee. And then for our winners, it's all about the approach. Yes, you're going to be making some putts, sure, but consistently the around the green is outweighing the off the tee, but the approach is the most important shot type, as you should probably expect from a Pete Dye design. We look at average strokes gained by hole by par. Again, no surprise, professionals are taking advantage of the par 5s. We move to the top 5s. Much more the same in terms of the distribution. 5s outweighing the 4s, which are slightly outweighing the 3s. And then for our winners, the par 3s really fall off. It is really about taking advantage of the 3 par 5 opportunities that you have at Harbor Town. A little bit in par 4s. So there's a look at your average strokes gained by hole by par for your top 10s, 5s, and winners. We move to hole composition. Our 4 par 3s are evenly split on either side of 200. 2 of them shorter than 200, 2 of them longer than 200 within that 25-yard range bucket there, as you see. We do have 1 drivable par 4, 1 short par 4, not drivable. So 2 very short par 4s. But the majority of the par 4s here at Harbor Town fall between 400 and 450 yards. 5 of the 11 par 4s fall between 400 and 450. And then 4 from 450 to 500. All 3 par 5s measure 550 to 600 on the scorecard. So at least early on in our research this week, as we move forward tonight and into tomorrow, we're going to be wanting to look at just that range of par 5s. Moving to approach shot distribution, looking like a big majority. I mean, in fact, a quarter of the approach shots in total measure from 175 to 200 just due to the forced layup nature of a lot of the holes here at Harbor Town. Quite a few still from 150 to 175 as well. Not a whole lot of 200 plus. So at least in terms of the most prominent, the most prevalent, we'd be looking at 175 to 200, but we'll really dig into this tomorrow in terms of approach shots and proximities. Looking at historic cut line, it's gotten slightly easier over the years as players have become more sophisticated in trying to attack the Harbor Town golf links. You see, it's been as easy as -3, but this also comes with a slight caveat here that this was due to 2020 being 2020. This was played in June, not in April, so slightly easier conditions. Most of the time we're hovering in this +1 range, maybe +2 if the wind really picks up. You see, it's been as high as +6 in the past when the winds really got chaotic. But we're looking roughly at a +1 to +2 range in terms of cut line. Of course, with this being a no-cut event, not really having to worry about the historic cut line or the cut line and whatnot. But just to give us an idea on how difficult Harbor Town generally plays year over year. Scoring distribution, not a whole lot of eagles, as we just saw in the scorecard. You do have a couple of par 5s that yield an eagle, in between 2 and 2.5% of the time. But quite a few birdie opportunities around Harbor Town, especially if you're hitting your irons well. But with water in play on every hole, there are big numbers to be made if you are not careful. So again, just signifying that this is about an average level difficulty course. Good evening, Barbarian. Good to see you this evening. Hopefully your Masters went well. You had some Scotty Scheffler, particularly futures, but Scotty Scheffler outrights. You played plenty of Max Homa, who I will admit I was completely wrong on. Some Bryson, some Tommy. It's good to see you. So close. Yeah, I mean I was fortunate in the sense that I mentioned this in the intro. Not really a big thing to hang my hat on, but I did have 70% 6-6 lineups in DFS. Of course, when the cut fell to +6 at the end of the day, thanks to the atrocious conditions, that saved quite a few of those lineups. So it was an okay week in terms of DFS. It was quite middling. I had a lot of minimum cashes thanks to all those 6-6 lineups. But I didn't have any Tommy, didn't have any Bryson, didn't have any Max Homa. So my earnings, my ability to really rise in the standings was quite limited. because of that. But hopefully we're going to get back on the right track for you this week for Harbor Town. And don't forget, it is a double tournament week this week. Yes, the main draw will be Harbor Town and the RBC Heritage, but we also have an alternate event. So stay tuned at the end of the show as I'll give you an update to my schedule this week. We move to some course specifics around Harbor Town. Driving accuracy much higher here than the average tour event, just due to the nature of the forced layups and players knowing that they can't be out of position on a Pete Dye course. A lot of times they will club down, so really emphasizing the accuracy. Green regulation percentage, no surprise here, just like Pebble Beach, extremely less than the average tour event. These are the second smallest greens on tour behind Pebble Beach. So greens not easy to hit here at all. We'll definitely be wanting to look at some metrics around that tomorrow. However, even though greens aren't easy to hit, scrambling is fairly easy around here. This rough is not very deep. Again, kept at an inch and a quarter. So if you are missing the green, it is reasonable to be able to get up and down. But we definitely do want to take into consideration some around the green, considering how often players miss the greens here at Harbor Town. 3 putts per round, very, very small. Again, the combination of small greens, not necessarily too difficult to putt on, whereas we had those lightning fast greens at the Masters. They're quite slowed down here at Harbor Town, a lot of that due to the wind. What is the term scrambling? So scrambling is any time, the easiest way to think about it is if a player misses the green in regulation, would be scrambling. That's the most often it comes up. However, a player can be scrambling right off their tee shot. If they put the tee shot in the water, they're going to be considered scrambling on that hole. But most of the time when you hear about scrambling, it is the fact that the player has missed the green in regulation, and therefore it is testing their around the green game, generally speaking. As you would expect with forced layups and a Pete Dye design that emphasizes accuracy, distance is just not a factor. A lot less here than the average tour event. And proximity, again, thanks to these very small greens, is quite a bit closer when you do hit the green in regulation. So there's a look at some of the statistics around Harbor Town in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. We'll go back to the players in the field this week and do note, Broberian, that Victor Hovland has decided not to play. That is why he is starred. He has withdrawn already from the event. But now that we have taken a look at some things around Harbor Town, we can take a look at a few of these overarching or main shot types in terms of strokes gained. But before we do that, I wanted to go check the historic conditions. So let's go ahead and do that. And that, again, as I was mentioning, this plays to about average. You've seen every round be average last year when it was I believe they called them premium event. Play to average there. You will get a few rounds that are difficult, especially if the wind does pick up. But for the majority of the time, you're looking at an average difficulty tournament. And then if the wind really does pick up, it'll get difficult. So we'll take a look at the wind starting tomorrow, or at least the forecast starting tomorrow. They are labeled as Bermuda greens. They are Bermuda base, but Poa Trivialis overseed. So we'll be looking at some Poa Trivialis greens. Course has always been labeled less than 7,200. This year it might get the 72 to 7,400 designation just because they've lengthened it again. But this is why I was confident in looking at short course performance, to get a good idea on the players who play short courses, because this is traditionally been less than 7,200. But nothing to do with difficulty this week. Not easy, not difficult. I generally don't look or like looking at the average difficult relative to par filter. So just in terms of straight strokes gained, no filters or anything, This is a Pete Dye design. We are absolutely going to want to be looking at some irons this week. So our top strokes gained approach players in the field this week, minus the Masters, that data is not yet in Fantasy National. Scotty Scheffler, Tom Hoge, Corey Connors, Xander, Tony Finau, Lucas Glover, Austin Eckroat, JT, Will Zalatoris, and Victor Paris are our top 10 in terms of strokes gained approach. Definitely want to look at around the green. Top 10 around the green: Mackenzie Hughes, Siwoo Kim, Scotty, Xander, Lucas Glover, Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, JT, Adam Schenk, and Stefan Jaeger are our top 10 in terms of around the green performance the past 36 rounds. I meant to have the 2024 filter on, but won't change too much. Good evening, Joanne. Ship It Nation member won $1 million today. I haven't seen that. I watched the Masters and then started preparing for the show, but that's awesome. That's what we're trying here to try and do, to find the right combination of players. Scotty was my pick, so not necessarily the boldest suggestion there, but I was not right on Max Homa. I was not right on Bryson. Didn't have any Tommy Fleetwood, although I did mention him. He didn't rate out well for me. But I was just nowhere near Max Homa. He had never played well at Augusta, and he comes and plays well. So credit to him. So we're gonna try and see if we can't be the Millie Makers this week, or at least the winners of the big prize. But it's good to see you this evening. Hopefully you had a very good Masters. Had some Scotty outright and played all of the correct plays this week. Let's see. Let's just take a look. I don't think this is going to change too much. The ordering might change, but our top strokes gained approach players in 2024. Actually, you know what? Just let me clear this. Let's go all records. Now put the 2024 filter on. Our top strokes gained approach players in 2024: Tom Hoge, Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors, Lucas Glover, Tony Finau, Austin Eckroat, Akshay Bhatia, Nick Taylor, Justin Thomas, and Cameron Young. Of course, this does not include the Masters. That data is not in here yet. Our top around the green players: Mackenzie Hughes, Scotty, Lucas Glover, Xander, Brendan Todd, Siwoo Kim, J-Day, Denny McCarthy, Adam Schenk, and Taylor Moore. Lastly, we will have to remove that filter, as we are going to be grabbing all of the courses that have Poa Trivialis. So those courses that traditionally have Poa Trivialis, of course, we're going to be looking at Harbour Town, where we are this week. Harbour Town. We're going to be looking at Innisbrook, the host of the Valspar. We look at Quail Hollow, host of the Wells Fargo Championship. I believe it's that top one. The Stadium Course, another Pete Dye design, has Poa Trivialis overseed. Although we only get a couple of rounds of data from the American Express, but we still get that data. TPC San Antonio, where we were a couple of weeks ago for the Valero. We need TPC Sawgrass, TPC Scottsdale, host of the WM Phoenix Open, and I passed it up because I need to add it to my list. We're going to look at Memorial Park. However, Memorial Park is going to be slightly misleading because it's only going to have 1 year of data when it was played in the spring, as opposed to when it was played in the fall, it had pure Bermuda. But we don't want to overlook the fact that Houston this year had Poa Trivialis overseas as well. So let's apply those course filters. In the past 2 years on Poa Trivialis overseed, your top putters have been Brendan Todd, Brian Harmon, Wyndham Clark, Sam Burns, Jason Day, Thomas Dietrich, Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Adam Schenk, and Nick Taylor. Those are your top 10 in terms of putting on Poa Trivialis overseed the past couple of years. Alrighty, let's clear all those filters. We're going to take a look at one thing fairly quickly. We saw that par 5 scoring was just vital, premium here at Harbour Town. So in 2024 on par fives that measure 550 to 600 yards, and we're singling out that range because all three measure to that length on the scorecard. We'll definitely go in and dig in deep into the data tomorrow to see if this is indeed the range we want to look at. But in terms of just an initial look and continuing our research into tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, I think it's pretty safe to look at just this range of par fives. So your top par five performers in 2024 from 550 to 600 yards: Nick Dunlap, Sahith Tagala, Corey Connors, Thomas Dietrich, Scotty Scheffler, Sam Burns, Harris English, Eric Van Rooyen, J-Day, and Stefan Jaeger. So, give these guys a little extra consideration when odds come out tomorrow morning or in your preliminary lineups before prices come out. These guys generally play the length of par fives here at Harbor Town the best. I would be interested to hear from the community. What do you think Scotty's price will be? What do you think his odds will be? I can absolutely envision a Scotty Scheffler 3-1 favorite. Absolutely, after coming off the win at the Players, at the Masters. I mean, I could easily see 3-1. I could see him going up to about 13,000 in DFS. So I'm quite interested when all of that comes out tomorrow, how, at least where I play, DraftKings is handling it. Okay. We'll go back to the Strokes gain in case there are more questions. But let's take a look at some previous performance at Harbor Town. And yes, you are right, Barbarian. That was supposedly the big drama today, that he would have withdrawn had he received the phone call that his wife went into labor. They're expecting their first child. It is very possible that he ends up not playing the RBC Heritage. I can just go by his word that he would have withdrawn. So you have to assume that he would withdraw in the case he gets the phone call at the RBC Heritage as well. So that is a little bit of a risk. But my goodness, the guy is the number one player in the world for a reason. He's just absolutely dominant right now. Absolutely dominant. All right, let's take a look at some previous performance here in the past 5 years at Harbor Town. Pretty close in terms of top performance between Cantlay and Fitzpatrick. Patrick Cantlay, 3 podium finishes, no wins, but 2/3, a second, and a miscut. Matt Fitzpatrick is our defending champion who beat Jordan Spieth in a playoff last year. Matt Fitzpatrick has a win, another top 5, and another top 15. So very solid here. JT Poston has been very solid here. I believe it was you, Bro Barian. It might have been someone else last week who mentioned Poston as intriguing for the Masters. And hopefully you followed with me on that I wanted no part of him. Yes, he made the cut to a 40th something place finish. I don't like JT Poston on courses that are long. Generally, this is when he's at his best, on these shorter courses, because he's not very long off the tee. You see his performance at Harbor Town, a top 5, 2 other top 10s. Now, he has missed the cut a couple times, but that's highlighting the volatility that Harbor Town can bring with all the water in play. So this is generally the style of course that I would like JT Poston on. Shorter, premium on accuracy, an iron play, which is what Poston's generally about. I don't know if when we dig into the data starting tomorrow and when I start making my mixed condition model, I'll have a better idea if I would recommend Poston, but at least in terms of conceptually fitting a course with a player, this does feel like a good JT Poston course. And the results back it up. Cam Davis has played very well, and he had a very good Masters. Top 5, a top 10, and another top 25. Corey Connors has been good here. Tommy has been good here. Jordan Spieth's been very good the past couple of years. runner-up, playoff runner-up last year and a win before that. Some other players here, Griot, a little bit of all or nothing. Brian Harmon's been pretty solid here. Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, Seabez, 3 for 3. This feels like a very good Christian Bezadenhout fit. Sung Jae has generally been very good at Pete Dye designs. You see he's played very well here the past 3 years. Colin Morikawa's 4 for 4 here. Much less in terms of elite success. I mean, he does have one top 10, but more middling finishes than anything. But still 4 for 4. Some other players of note, Denny McCarthy's 4 for 5. You see Russell Henley has been quite all or nothing. A top 10, a top 20, and then 3 missed cuts. So not the best. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well here. Even with the added emphasis of around the green, Mackenzie Hughes has struggled here. 3 for 5, but the least in terms of strokes gained total. Andrew Putnam, despite the lack of off the tee necessary here at Harbor Town, he's only 1 for 5. He has not played here well, or played well here. Goodness. Ben On, 0 for 3. Tom Hoagie, 1 for 5. Stefan Jaeger, 0 for 2. Shank is only 2 for 5 here. Siwoo Kim's not been good here. Nick Taylor's not been good here. Malnati. Now, Wyndham Clark is 5 for 5 in making the cut the last 5 years, but you see all these finishes, they are quite middling to bad. Keep that in mind. Bryce Garnett, not great. So there's a look at the players who have not played particularly well at Harbor Town the past 5 years. So with that, good segue to wrap up the show this evening with the early look file in Microsoft Excel. This is performance, again, in the past 5 years, specifically at Harbor Town. So you can see the 1 year Scotty Scheffler played, which I believe was last year. He gained 4 off the tee. He gained a little more than 5 in approach at Harbor Town. Lost a half a stroke putting. Taylor Moore did everything on the greens and was pretty mediocre to bad otherwise. Cam Davis in his 3 years here has been pretty good at all aspects. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the players who have only played Harbor Town once. I want to see the players who consistently play Harbor Town year over year, what they have done well. So you see players that have averaged a top 40 finish, that is 16 of them. It's a decent amount, decent enough sample size. Surprisingly, off the tee is a decent little bit here. This is an average of 1.7. Not necessarily a whole lot of big numbers. You see 4, 4.5, 5.5 in the approach, but everyone has been at least positive and off the tee. So that's something interesting we'll have to look at tomorrow in the Data Dive show. We'll take a look at some of the prior leaderboards, see just how much off the tee has contributed, because I don't foresee off the tee being a big factor here. But for the players who have played it the best, they've at least been okay at it. Okay to good, maybe even great. Irons, the approach, this is a 1.8. It's really getting hurt by these two at the bottom. If you remove those two, it rises all the way to a 2.3. Svensson's been good with his irons here, and he's 2 for 2. Colin Morikawa has been good with the irons as well. JT's been good with the irons here. Around the green, okay, I suppose. Couple of really poor performances. Svensson, Morikawa. Putting, much more the same. Not necessarily the most important. So, really, we're looking at the irons. We'll have to dig in a little bit with the off the tee. Let's take a look at distance and greens, fairways, and whatnot. Distance, just not a lot here. Bezadenhout, pretty low. Now, there's some pretty big numbers here, but these guys are kind of known for being bombers. Davis, big hitter off the tee. Cantlay moves it. JT can move it off the tee. So, players like Morikawa, Poston, even though they're positive in distance, it's pretty close to field average, really. You take a look at somebody like Tony Finau. He's just kind of decent, middling in terms of driver distance here at Heritage. I just don't see it being a big factor. We saw that in the course breakdown. Surprisingly, at least to me, the fairways aren't a big deal for the players who have played it consistently and consistently well. This is barely above a 0.0. So my thing would probably be good drives gained or greens, which was where I was leaning anyway. Good drive gained being the player has hit the fairway or they are still able to hit the green from the rough, hit the green in regulation from the rough. But again, we'll have to take a look into the prior leaderboards and whatnot and figure out what really is contributing to a lot of the success year over year, because this is kind of all over the place. Not nearly as correlating as I thought it would be on good drives. Greens a little bit the same. Greens is quite a bit higher, 1.6 versus a 0.7, 0.8. So probably greens is where it's at, considering these greens are so small. They're tough to hit. But I'd like to see what the data says tomorrow. Look into scoring. The bigger numbers and the more consistency is in these birdies. So with this being an average difficulty course, generally speaking, we might be looking at birdies gained on short courses. That's kind of where I'm leaning, because not a single player is negative in terms of birdies gained if they've averaged a top 40 finish and played it multiple times. So that's pretty telling. That's pretty telling there. And you got some big numbers from Cam Young and Cam Davis, but generally just solid. Moving to 3s, 4s, and 5s, just very quickly. Par 3s, gosh dang it. This is a 0.6. They're just not a big factor. Par 4s, not a single player negative in these par 4s either, as you can see. This is a 3.4. Par 5s, off your screen I know, but it's significantly higher than the par 3s as well. So we're going to be... We're probably going to be... I won't say eliminating par 3s, but they will definitely be diminished in importance. Moving to par 4s. Again, as I highlighted, not a single player negative in them if they've played well here at Harbor Town. If there's a range, maybe this one. Yeah, 1.3, 1.1. So, again, some more data we'll have to dig into tomorrow night. Looking at the par 5s. Now, all 3 par 5s on the scorecard measure to here, 550 to 600. So, very rarely will they play to these 2 lengths, but they have in the past. But you see a 2 out of a 2.8, 1.5 out of a 2.3, 1.9 out of a 2.1. Majority of the strokes gained are in here in these 550 to 600, and that's why we looked at that, only that range tonight. Last thing, let's take a look at the proximity. I don't think total procs will be a big thing, but there's quite a few pretty solid performances here. Majority of the approach shots, at least compared to the PGA Tour average, is here in the 175 to 200, and it looks pretty strong. It does look pretty strong there. You got, a slightly poor performance from Bezadenhout, pretty bad from Poston, pretty bad from Tagala, but everybody else has been, acceptable to great. Justin Thomas has been elite at that level, or that range of proximity, specifically here at Harbor Town. So, at least tonight, the 175 to 200 would be the proximity that we'd want to look at. All right, that is... I'll bring everybody back that has played Harbor Town. That's going to be it for the show this evening. Thanks to Barbarian and Joanne for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully your all's Masters went well, and we'll get on the right track, find the right plays this week to make ourselves the newest Millie maker winner for this week. So thanks to you two for jumping in chat. Thanks to everybody else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to do this without your all's help and support. Again, it's just very, very much appreciated. Reminder for the schedule this week. With this being a double tournament week, yes, the main event, the main tournament of the week is the RBC Heritage. So tonight is the initial research. Tomorrow will be the data dive. Wednesday night will be the DFS Tactics. But Tuesday evening, we will cover the full show. Research, we will cover the data dive and the DFS Tactics all in one show Tuesday night for the Corrales down in the Dominican Republic. So if you have any interest in playing DFS or are going to make any wagers in the alternate field event, think about tuning in Tuesday night, as I will be covering that event. So thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. For all of the wagers you made this week for the Masters, for all the DFS contests you played this week for the Masters, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.